It started like any other quiet morning in Maple Oak Reserve. Dew on the grass, birdsong in the distance, and the comforting smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. I was halfway through configuring my server firewall when the motion alert from our front camera pinged on my phone. I glanced over, expecting a squirrel, maybe a package, but what I saw made my blood run cold. A man, overweight, jittery, in a tactical vest 2 sizes too small, was standing in our front yard with a handgun pointed at my wife's face. Claire. My heart stopped. Hands trembling, I dropped my mug. It shattered, ceramic skidding across the floor like some kind of cruel punctuation mark. Out on the lawn, Claire stood calm, still. No panic. Just her, hoodie half-zipped, earbuds dangling from one side, eyes locked on the man holding the weapon. She didn't move, didn't flinch. The guy looked like he had just binge-watched one too many action movies. He held the pistol sideways like some kind of gangsta wannabe. Except his fingers were shaking, his chest heaving like he was about to pass out from his own adrenaline. "ID!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Where's your neighborhood identification? This is a restricted jogging zone." Jogging zone? My wife had been running a casual morning loop around the neighborhood. That's it. She didn't carry ID because, well, who the hell runs with a badge? What that man, what Carlson, as I later found out, didn't know was that the woman he was threatening was a Delta Force operative, not former, active. She had flown back from a classified mission overseas exactly 48 hours ago. Her duffel bag still hadn't been unpacked. I knew she could have taken him down with a stick, a shoelace, or hell, probably even a pine cone. But she didn't. Not yet. She gave him a chance. One chance. I bolted for the door, heart pounding like a drum. By the time I stepped outside, 2 more men in tactical cosplay had arrived. One held a clipboard. The other, a speed radar gun, pointed at our mailbox. Claire stood in the middle of them, hands partially raised. Her breathing was steady. Her eyes never left the gun. I wanted to yell, to run in. But then I saw it. Her right hand twitched. Barely. Just enough for me to know she was calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to act. If she moved, it was over for them. I'd seen her train with real operators. These guys, they were amateurs playing dress-up in a sandbox they didn't understand. Then came the shouting. "You match the description," Carlson barked. "Suspicious behavior. Possible casing activity." Claire tilted her head, voice low and calm. "Are you law enforcement?" He puffed up his chest. "We're HOA security. That's higher than local police around here." I swear to God, she almost smiled. Just the faintest tug at the corner of her lips. She took a slow breath and said evenly, "Sir, I'm going to ask you, one time, to lower your weapon. For your own safety." He didn't. What happened next didn't take more than 2 seconds. The gun hit the grass with a dull thud. Carlson hit the pavement harder. One blink, and he was face down, arm pinned behind him in a hold so clean, so precise, I knew it probably had a NATO designation. Claire wasn't even winded. She crouched beside him, whispered something I couldn't hear. But whatever it was, it made his eyes go wide like he'd seen a ghost. The real police arrived minutes later. 2 cruisers. They asked for ID. Claire reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out a laminated credential I'd never seen before. One of the officers scanned it, looked up, and nodded like he'd just seen a general in disguise. "Ma'am," he said, "you're good to go." Just like that. No questions, no handcuffs, no warning. Karen Blakely, HOA president, neighborhood dictator, queen of clipboard-based control, arrived 10 minutes late, hair disheveled, rage barely masked by her forced smile. When she saw her captain on the ground nursing a bruised ego and a bent pride, her face turned 3 different shades of indignation. I should have known then. We should have known. That she wouldn't let it end there. That night, an email went out to the entire community. Subject line: Emergency Response Protocol Breach. Resident under investigation. And just like that, a petty tyrant declared war. On Claire. On me. On the idea that anyone could jog without permission in her paper kingdom. What Karen didn't realize was, she wasn't just picking a fight with a soldier. She was picking a fight with a storm. The email came just after midnight. Subject line: Notice of investigation. Emergency HOA protocols initiated. Attached was a grainy PDF full of buzzwords and half-baked accusations. Aggressive conduct, suspicious civilian behavior, and my personal favorite, operational stealth presence. They made it sound like Claire had parachuted into the neighborhood under cover of darkness instead of, jogging in a hoodie. And thus, the HOA's battle lines were drawn. The next evening, Karen called an emergency neighborhood meeting, because of course she did, held in the Maple Oak Community Center, or as Claire now called it, the Palace of Paranoia. She didn't go. Claire stayed on the porch, wrapped in a fleece blanket, sipping tea and watching the live stream through a kid's hacked GoPro feed. I went, against her advice, because I needed to see what we were really up against. The meeting started 2 minutes late. HOA heresy. And Karen strutted to the podium like she was delivering a State of the Union address. She wore a khaki vest weighed down with faux law enforcement pins, and a Bluetooth headset that looked like it belonged at an airport gate. Behind her, a whiteboard displayed in big red capital letters: Defensive Response Strategy, HOA Peacekeeper Injured in the Line of Duty. Sitting nearby was Carlson, now lovingly referred to as Captain Fredrickson, his arm in a sling and an ice pack balanced pathetically on his shoulder. Karen cleared her throat like she was about to recite scripture. "Neighbors," she began solemnly, "we are under threat. Yesterday morning, one of our brave peacekeepers was attacked by a resident with a known history of aggression." I raised my hand. She didn't want to call on me. You could see it in her eyes. But the room was too crowded, too curious. "Yes, Mr. Owens," she said, voice sugary and strained. "What's this known history exactly?" I asked. Because unless my wife's aggression extends to composting too enthusiastically or trimming our hedges without HOA approval, I think we're stretching the definition here. A couple people chuckled. Karen didn't. "We ask that residents refrain from sarcastic interruptions," she snapped. "This is a serious matter." "Right," I said, like seriously pointing a gun at someone for jogging. That one landed. Even the clipboard guy in the back blinked. But Karen wasn't done. "We have reason to believe," she said slowly, like every word was being carefully unwrapped, "that the individual in question was casing homes for future theft. She was listening to a true crime podcast while jogging." She paused like that was the smoking gun. "You mean like half the country?" I muttered. That's when the murmurs began, whispers from the back row, side eyes between couples. The room, once obediently silent under Karen's rule, was starting to crack. And then came the moment everything shifted. Unbeknownst to Karen, one of her own so-called officers had been wearing a body cam, not out of any real policy, but because he wanted to look official. What he forgot was that the cam had Wi-Fi. What he didn't realize was that one of the neighborhood teens, shout out to Lucas from Lot 17, had hacked into the footage, downloaded it, and shared it in a public folder named "The HOA Strikes Back, Uncut." When the footage began playing on a borrowed projector, the entire room leaned forward. There was Claire, jogging, calm, earbuds in. The golf cart skidded to a stop in front of her, shouting, confusion. And then the gun. She paused, said something, removed one earbud, and then, in less than 3 seconds, she had Carlson disarmed, face down, and whispering something about miscommunication. There was no violence, no aggression, just trained efficiency. When the clip ended, the silence was deafening. Not out of fear, but realization. Karen's story had collapsed. Someone from the back muttered, "Maybe she should be running the HOA." Karen slammed her clipboard on the podium. "Enough! That footage was unauthorized. It doesn't show the full context." "What context justifies pointing a gun at a woman taking a jog?" someone asked flatly. She tried regaining control. She called for order. She pivoted, blamed external influence, mumbled something about neighborhood sovereignty. It didn't matter. The curtain had been pulled back. That night, Claire sat across from me at the kitchen table, laptop open, her expression cool and focused. The same look I'd seen when she used to plan briefings overseas. Everything they're hiding, she said, is in the documents they assume no one reads. HOA bylaws? I asked. Worse, she said. Financials, property filings, vendor contracts. Fraud leaves a paper trail. All we have to do is follow it. Over the next few days, our home turned into a war room. Claire printed spreadsheets, highlighted payment trails, flagged vendor IDs. Turns out, the HOA had funneled over $180,000 in the last 2 years to a landscaping company that didn't exist. On paper, Green Realm Landscaping LLC had installed fountains, upgraded sidewalks, even planted 30 gardens. In reality, one fountain, no sidewalk repairs, and the gardens were overgrown weeds behind the clubhouse dumpster. She cross-referenced everything with security footage, time-stamped, labeled, verified. And when she was done, she leaned back, stretched her arms, and smiled like a sniper locking onto a target. Now, she said, we distribute this. Not with rage, not with revenge, with clarity. The next morning, we left flyers on every doorstep. No accusations, just facts. Bullet points. Proof. Later that day, I watched Karen from the window, standing in front of one of the signs we'd posted. Her face was pale, her hands clenched. She knew. The silence wasn't retreat. It was pressure. And Claire? She hadn't even started the real offensive yet. By the end of the week, the silence from the HOA wasn't calm. It was ominous. The patrol carts had stopped circling. No clipboard patrols, no passive-aggressive flyers, no HOA incident alerts stuffed under our doormat. But that didn't mean Karen was done. No. It meant she was recalculating. It came on a Tuesday, sealed in a glossy envelope labeled, Urgent Community Compliance Violation. Claire opened it with the calm precision of someone diffusing a mine. Inside, a printed list of charges. Failure to display resident identification badge while jogging. Intimidating demeanor during recreational activity. Excessive aggression while breathing. My personal favorite, running with hostile energy. $1,470 in total fines, due immediately. Claire didn't flinch. She just flipped the paper over, jotted down a list of dates and names, and muttered, she escalated. Good. Because what Karen didn't understand, what she never understood, was that Claire had never planned on fighting this battle with fists or fury. No. Claire fought with precision, with information, with truth. And truth, as it turned out, was Karen's kryptonite. That evening, Claire filed a formal complaint with a federal regulatory office. Not a police department, not the city council. This went higher. An office buried deep in bureaucracy where compliance meant everything. Within 48 hours, a cease and desist letter was drafted. Legally binding. Signed. Stamped. At 9:01 a.m., a government courier in a Navy windbreaker walked up to Karen's porch, handed her the letter, and left without a word. Neighbors say she stood frozen for a full minute before slamming the door shut. The next 2 days? Absolute stillness. No HOA bulletins, no security patrols. Not a single sighting of Captain Clipboard or his fake radar gun. Claire called it the eye of the storm. But while Karen cowered, Claire moved. She launched what she called Operation Curb Appeal. It sounded innocent. Harmless, even. Like a gardening project. But it was a full-blown, info-driven campaign to dismantle the HOA's false authority. One spreadsheet at a time. First came the flyers. Bright, clean, factual. No insults, no drama. Just where HOA dues were supposed to go. Where they actually went. A breakdown of fines collected over the past year, and how many were issued by HOA officers related to Karen. Every figure was sourced, every chart cited. Claire didn't shout at the community. She whispered the truth, door to door. Then came the lawn signs, professionally printed, bright, bold, hilarious. One read, HOA, helping oligarchs abuse. Another, smile, you're being fined for breathing. My personal favorite had a cartoon of Karen holding a gavel with the slogan, Obey or Pay. Within 72 hours, over 20 homes had signs proudly staked in their yards. Karen sent a warning bulletin claiming unauthorized signage was a code violation. Nobody cared. The illusion was cracking. Karen panicked. She started issuing new HOA rules, 6 in one night. All unvoted, all illegal. All residents must wear visible ID badges in public spaces. HOA security could now issue on-site citations without appeals. Any behavior deemed disruptive to communal peace could result in forced expulsion from the neighborhood. Yes, expulsion. Like she was the dean of some delusional private college and the rest of us were delinquent freshmen. Then came the kicker, the restraining order. Filed in county court, it accused Claire of militant behavior, psychological warfare, and tactical manipulation. Karen submitted heavily edited footage, conveniently omitting the moment her captain pointed a gun at a jogger. But by then, the court had already received the full, unedited clip from 5 other neighbors. The judge didn't even ask for rebuttal. He tossed the filing within minutes, ruling it a frivolous abuse of legal process. Still, Karen didn't stop. That same afternoon, HOA patrols resumed. Only now they weren't just watching. They were harassing. One of them crouched behind a bush outside our house with binoculars. Another aimed a radar gun at our mailbox. Carlson even tried to hand-deliver another fine, accusing us of excessive porch furniture. Claire? She didn't even open the door. Instead, she made a phone call. Short. Calm. I only heard her side. Yes, sir. Understood. No weapons involved. Yes, I'll handle it from here. Then she turned to me. We're on the record now, she said. Time to start digging. And so, we did. We combed through public records, business registrations, vendor licenses, HOA meeting minutes, every corner of bureaucratic shadow. What we found? Green Realm Landscaping, the company that allegedly handled all HOA beautification, didn't exist. On paper, they'd installed 8 fountains, landscaped 30 gardens, and resurfaced 2 roads. In reality, 2 fountains, 1 broken. The roads untouched. The gardens? A few potted plants behind the rec center. Claire matched every listed service date to footage from our home security cams. Time-stamped, clear, undeniable. She compiled everything into a clean audit package. No accusations, just facts. And she sent it. Not to Karen. To the Federal Housing Compliance Board. A day later, Karen locked down the clubhouse and posted a members-only sign on the door. She stationed Carlson out front with what looked like a modified leaf blower rigged to look like a deterrent device. It was pitiful, desperate, but still dangerous, because a cornered fraud doesn't retreat, they swing wildly. Claire knew this. She watched it happen in war zones, in boardrooms, in broken governments halfway across the world. Power built on fear is loudest when it's about to fall. And fall it would. But not before Karen made one more desperate move. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Claire was out walking, unarmed, wearing a simple sweatshirt that read, "Love thy neighbor." In her tote bag, audit copies, nothing more. Carlson, acting on Karen's orders, jumped into a golf cart and chased her. Not followed. Chased. He shouted something about Code Red Community Seizure Protocol. Claire didn't run. She simply stepped off the sidewalk. What he didn't realize was that next to our house, the landscapers had left a shallow trench, never filled in properly. The cart hit the edge, tipped, rolled, right into the honeysuckle bushes. Claire didn't even break stride. She walked over, plucked her tote from the cart's passenger seat, dropped a granola bar next to him and said, "In case you're in there a while." The video went viral within hours. And for Karen, there was no more illusion left to hide behind. After the golf cart crash, everything got quiet again. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a building implodes. Karen didn't release a statement. No bulletins, no HOA fines. The clubhouse stayed locked, and Captain Clipboard disappeared faster than HOA dues in a fake landscaping account. But Claire knew better. "She's regrouping," she said, eyes still on her laptop. "Wounded pride doesn't retreat. It plots." And Karen? She wasn't just plotting. She was panicking. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived, Another violation notice? No. Worse. It was a restraining order, filed against Claire. The language was absurd. Karen accused her of military-grade intimidation, tactical manipulation of neighborhood resources, and coordinated psyops designed to destabilize community morale. I couldn't help laughing until I saw Claire's face. Not angry, not surprised, just focused. Classic overreach, she murmured. She's forcing her own collapse. Karen had even submitted evidence, heavily edited footage that conveniently cut out the part where her own officer pulled a gun on a jogger. Unfortunately for her, the county judge had already received the unedited video from 5 different neighbors. The hearing lasted under 10 minutes. The judge looked over the documents, raised a single eyebrow, and said, "This is either the most creative fiction I've seen all year, or you've been watching too much Homeland." Denied. Case dismissed. Countersuit threatened. Still, Karen didn't stop. That evening, the patrol carts came back. Slower. Creepier. One parked outside our house for over an hour with binoculars pointed at our porch. Another left a warning on our mailbox. Improper flag dimensions. Subject to fine. Claire didn't even blink. Instead, she pulled out a folder labeled Operation Firebreak. It was already color-coded. "Time to bring in the scalpel," she said, tapping her pen. "Not the sword." Over the next week, we turned our living room into a command center. Claire pulled records. Every payment, permit, and petty fine the HOA had ever issued. She mapped Karen's entire web of control. Fake positions, nepotism, misuse of funds, ghost vendors. Every thread, exposed. She even built a timeline showing how HOA fines surged during election seasons, likely to punish unfavorable homes or boost support for HOA-approved candidates. Karen had turned neighborhood governance into a private fiefdom. And Claire? She was about to evict the queen. Next, Claire contacted a retired federal auditor she'd once worked with during a joint task force assignment. Quietly, carefully, she asked for a referral. No questions. Just access. Within 72 hours, the Federal Housing Oversight Office launched a preliminary inquiry into Maple Oak HOA. A formal audit order followed. Karen responded by barricading the clubhouse, hosting a Facebook live stream from her living room, flanked by Captain Clipboard, and an American flag she probably ironed that morning. She referred to herself as Madam President 6 times in under 10 minutes. She claimed Claire was part of a domestic intimidation campaign to dismantle civilian governance. She accused us of deep-faking footage, hacking HOA servers, and, my personal favorite, weaponizing public sentiment. Public sentiment? I whispered. You mean, people not liking her? Claire didn't even smile. She's not talking to the community anymore, she said. She's talking to herself. Still, Karen doubled down. She pushed 3 new HOA rules overnight, none of them legal, all of them absurd. HOA now had emergency powers to revoke landscaping privileges. All street-facing windows had to be covered by approved curtains. Any mention of HOA activities on social media required board approval. We printed those new laws and stapled them to a sign in our yard labeled Local Comedy Hour. The next day, Claire took the final step. She filed a petition with the city council to initiate an oversight hearing into Maple Oak HOA's legal authority. She wasn't alone. Several neighbors, led by a retired lawyer named Mrs. Hillman, joined the effort. They collected signatures, handed out audit summaries, and printed flyers with phrases like, "Where are our dues going?" Fountains promised. 8. Fountains delivered. 2. 1 broken. The community woke up like someone had opened a window and let in oxygen. People who'd once been afraid to park on the wrong side of the curb were now publicly calling for Karen's resignation. One house even decorated their mailbox with plastic gavels and a sign that said, "I object." By the time the city council set the hearing date, Karen was barely holding her narrative together. She showed up to the hearing with a binder the size of a microwave and an entourage of wannabe security guards, none of whom could look Claire in the eye. Claire? She came in jeans and a black t-shirt. No folder, no fanfare, just one manila envelope. When she spoke, she didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She simply presented. The fake landscaping company. The non-existent fountains. The missing funds. The threats, the illegal fines. And then, with the whole room leaning forward, she played a voice recording of Karen, caught on tape, threatening to personally evict any resident who brings shame to the HOA. There was a pause. Then one of the council members leaned forward and asked, "Mrs. Owens, would you mind sharing your professional background?" Claire straightened. Calm. Measured. "I currently serve in a classified capacity with a U.S. Army Tier 1 Special Mission Unit," she said. "I have over a decade of experience in intelligence, threat coordination, and counter-corruption operations." The silence that followed was electric. Another council member, a retired Army colonel, leaned back and smiled. "I thought I recognized you," he said. "Welcome home, ma'am." Karen didn't return to the clubhouse after that. The HOA's bank account was frozen. Operations suspended. Refunds were requested. Receipts were demanded. Residents stopped paying dues. Claire didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. She just stepped back out onto our porch, took a deep breath of the fresh, rule-free air, and quietly said, "She's not done yet. She still thinks she can win." And somewhere inside that quiet moment, I knew Claire had one last move left on the board. For a brief, surreal moment, it felt like we had won. The HOA board had been suspended. The clubhouse remained locked. The patrol carts disappeared like ghosts that had finally lost their haunting rights. And Karen Blakely, the woman who once wielded clipboards like weapons, had gone completely silent. No fines, no threats, no new bylaws. Just quiet. But Claire didn't call it victory. Not yet. "She's not the kind to fade away," she said one evening, sipping tea on the porch. "Silence, for people like her, isn't surrender. It's setup." And sure enough, 3 weeks later, Karen returned. She didn't storm in. She didn't show up at a council meeting or host a live stream from her front lawn. No. She arrived in a borrowed minivan, stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, and marched right up to our porch without knocking. She left a leather-bound folder on our welcome mat. No words, just turned and walked away like she was dropping off cookies. Claire didn't even glance up from her tablet. "Leave it," she said. "She's baiting us." I opened it anyway. Inside, a dense, self-congratulatory letter dripping with deflection. Karen wasn't apologizing. She was rebranding herself as the victim of a coordinated takedown. She accused Claire of military intimidation tactics, claimed the audit was falsified, the HOA board was coerced under duress, and concluded with a formal request for mediation to avoid federal escalation. "She thinks she's still playing the game," I muttered. Claire read the letter once, folded it neatly, and slid it into a manila envelope. Then she emailed the Federal Oversight Office. No commentary. No dramatics. Just the file. "She buried herself months ago," Claire said quietly. "I'm just making sure someone turns the paperwork in." A week later, Karen showed up in court, representing herself. That, in itself, could have been the punchline. She brought a slideshow, complete with clip art gavels, blurry screenshots, and a poorly photoshopped image of Claire standing next to a tank. Her opening argument: "This is proof of paramilitary influence in neighborhood governance." The judge interrupted her 10 minutes in. "Miss Blakely," he asked dryly, "did you ever possess legal authority to detain or fine residents under the name of any recognized law enforcement agency?" Karen tried to pivot. The judge didn't let her. What followed was a brutal public dismantling of everything she'd built. The fake positions, the illegal citations, the shell company laundering HOA funds. The verdict came fast. HOA dissolved. Karen fined and ordered to repay thousands in restitution. Banned from holding any residential leadership role for at least 10 years. Back home, Claire didn't celebrate. No victory lap. No social media posts. She just returned to her routine. Morning jogs, garden upkeep, porch coffee. She never gloated. But the neighborhood? Oh, the neighborhood celebrated for her. Someone threw a block party, complete with a grill, cornhole, and a playlist that included "Another One Bites the Dust" on loop. Someone else delivered a lawn sign that read, "Neighborhood Hero, 0 fines since 2024. Claire actually kept that one up. And then, just when it seemed like everything was settling back into normal, real normal, something arrived in the mail. A plain manila envelope, no return address, stamped with military clearance codes I'd never seen before. Inside, one sheet of paper, a commendation from the U.S. Department of Defense for exceptional conduct and civilian oversight in defense of constitutional rights. No medal, no ceremony, just a typed note and a handwritten message at the bottom. "We're proud of how you handled it. See you soon." Claire stared at it for a long moment, then folded it and slipped it into the locked drawer where she kept her old field logs, the one even I didn't have the key to. That night I asked her a question I hadn't dared ask before. "Do you miss it?" I said. "The structure? The danger? The mission?" She looked up from the stars, her hand loosely wrapped around a mug of green tea. She didn't answer right away. Then finally she said, "Sometimes. But this mattered too. Peace is the mission now." We thought that was the end. But fate has a sense of timing. Late one evening, after cleaning up from a community cookout where someone actually brought us homemade zucchini bread just because, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Not tinted like a threat, clean, official in a quiet sort of way. A man in a suit stepped out, hair clipped military short, shoulders squared with precision. He didn't introduce himself. He simply nodded to Claire. She nodded back. He handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it, read it silently. Then she looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw it. That flicker. That fire I hadn't seen since the day she returned from her last mission. Not fear, not anxiety, certainty. I didn't need to ask. "When do you leave?" I said. "Dawn," she replied. "Briefing en route." She packed light. No dramatic goodbye, no final words, just a handwritten note left on my desk that read, "Karen was just the warm-up. This is the mission." And at sunrise, I stood on our porch with a cup of coffee as she walked, calm and steady, toward the waiting SUV. She didn't look back. She never did. That wasn't her style. She had a job to do. Somewhere out there, the world still needed people like her. And this time, it would be ready. The new HOA president is Tom, a retired postal worker with a big heart and zero interest in power. His first and only bylaw: don't be a jerk. The neighborhood is finally what we hoped it would be. A place where people wave when they pass, not worry about being fined for the height of their grass. Porch lights stay on past 9 p.m. now. Kids play on sidewalks without being trailed by golf carts. As for me, I still work from my home office. Same desk, same firewall. But now, every so often, someone stops by with cookies or invites me to poker night. And sometimes when I sit outside on the porch, coffee in hand, I catch myself smiling, because I know. This peace? It wasn't handed to us. It was earned. Some battles are fought in deserts, jungles, and foreign cities under cover of night. Others unfold quietly on sunlit sidewalks, behind white picket fences, and under banners of community safety. We never thought moving to a quiet, HOA-controlled neighborhood would turn into a war zone. Not one with bullets or bombs, but with paperwork, power, and silence sharpened like a blade. But it did. And the woman they tried to intimidate with fines and threats? She dismantled them without ever raising her voice. She didn't win by fighting harder. She won by being smarter, calmer, and more prepared. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real lesson buried beneath all the drama and laughs and golf carts gone rogue. You don't need a uniform to be a warrior. You just need clarity, courage, and conviction. Claire didn't charge in screaming. She didn't respond to hate with rage. She studied. She planned. She fought misinformation with facts, tyranny with law, and intimidation with quiet, relentless truth. And here's the thing. You can too. Because this story, wild as it seems, isn't just about a rogue HOA president or a woman with elite training. It's about the ways we all give up small freedoms when we're tired, distracted, or just trying to get by. How little by little, power concentrates in the hands of those who mistake silence for permission. That's how it always starts. With someone telling you where you can park, what you can plant, what time your porch light should turn off. It's easy to laugh it off, to let it slide, until one day, someone points a gun at your spouse for going on a jog. So no, this wasn't just about jogging. It was about standing your ground when the rules stopped making sense. About refusing to be ruled by fear disguised as order. About knowing your rights, not to provoke, but to protect. And most of all, it was about remembering that courage isn't loud. Sometimes, courage is a woman calmly stepping off the sidewalk, while a man in a fake uniform barrels toward her in a golf cart of his own delusion. Sometimes, it's a husband printing flyers, a neighbor filming with their phone, a kid named Lucas hacking into a body cam stream, not for likes, but for truth. This story, in its heart, is a reminder. When systems fail, communities can rise. When fear spreads, facts can cut through. And when someone tells you to sit down and be quiet, that might be the moment you need to stand. So whether you're facing an HOA board gone mad, an unfair workplace, a toxic leader, or even just the internal voice that says you're not enough, remember this. You don't have to fight with fists. You can fight with focus, with paper, with purpose. Claire never needed to raise her voice. She just needed to speak the truth, clearly and without apology. And in the end, the tyrants always crumble, because they were never as powerful as they made you believe. And now, here we are. A neighborhood that smiles again, that waves instead of whispers, that remembers what real peace looks like, because we almost lost it. And me? I still wake up early, still watch the porch camera feed, still sip my coffee before the sun rises. But now, when the wind blows through the trees Claire planted, I don't just hear rustling leaves. I hear a quiet reminder. Sometimes, peace is the mission. Sometimes peace is the victory. And sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply refuse to back down. So let me ask you this. Have you ever stood up for something no one else would? Has silence ever felt like surrender in your life? What would you do if the rules stopped making sense, but everyone around you stayed quiet? We want to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, your battles, big or small. Tell us the moments where you pushed back and why it mattered. Let's build a space where resilience isn't just told through fiction, but lived through experience. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're blueprints for bravery. And if this one lit a fire in you, big or small, hit that subscribe button. Tap follow. Join us here at the Story Forge, where ordinary moments become extraordinary tales, and where truth, no matter how quiet, always finds its voice. This is not the end, just the beginning of the next story.